You find it uncomfortable to openly talk about race and segregation? Well, I asked our panel this very question as we continue our Black History Month panel series. Take a look. Why as a society do you think we're uncomfortable talking about race?
I believe that a lot of times we fear the labels that are associated. So a lot of times you are one voice tone away from being labeled radical or angry. You are, if you're a black person. If you're a white person, you may be one phrase away from being labeled as a racist. The label can be a stigma that sticks with you.
My parents grew up and were born in Mexico, so when they moved here to the city of Chicago, talking about a different race and talking about a different culture was like almost weird to them because they were so used to being with the same kind of people, the same people that had the beliefs, the culture, the atmosphere, everything was the same to them. So when they moved over here, like I was never really talked about race. I think that also plays a role where it depends on where your parents come from, where your family comes from, whether or not they are comfortable talking about race, because we learn everything from our parents and the environment that we live in.
One of the good things about Trump is he pulled the rug back on America that's always been there, but we want to pretend somehow that's not the real America. It is the real America. Yeah. The uncomfortableness is really dealing with saying, accepting responsibility, particularly for Caucasians, of what we hold in power and control. It demands change. And that's one of the things Americans really don't like to do, is change.
I'm originally from the South. I've been in Chicago 5 years, and I feel Chicago is segregated. So that should tell you something.
It's in the discomfort where healing begins. Because healing, it's in the surgery room. That's just uncomfortable, but it's where healing. You've got to go past your comfort zone if we ever want to be healed.
Okay, so let's talk about segregation in Chicago. How did it happen and what can we do about it?
Most of the major cities that where the migration happened, they haven't integrated like they should have. They're mostly segregated into certain areas. Chicago is one of the biggest ones. However, what ends up happening is this: people will integrate, but the integration doesn't stick because we still don't trust each other.
And I think it's been, a lot of it has been by design. You know, we designed, we did this community was going to be for African Americans. This community was going to be for Hispanics. This community was going to be for Asian. There was a lot of design. The Dan Ryan Expressway was part of the design of segregation on the South Side. And it's been defined so long that that's what Chicago is, that it's become acceptable.
I think just making that effort to understand the other person's culture, however that is really important, because that's really how we start to develop that respect too.
I was on the red line shortly after I moved to Chicago. I got on the southbound red line, and immediately within 3 or 4 stops, everybody on the train was black, and I knew I was headed in the wrong direction. So I got off, walked to the other side of the platform, got on, finally got through the downtown area. Once you get through downtown, start heading north, within a few stops, almost everybody on the train was white. And that was shortly after I moved to Chicago, and I was like, oh my God, this is the red line.
We are so afraid of difference, and we never embrace it as beauty and gift and as wonder. And until we get rid of that fear and embrace the gift of each other, we're always going to have it.
That's the only way that this thing is going to ever be cured, is that we learn to trust each other. But you can't trust each other when truth is under such attack. And so literally the race baiting, the message of race baiting is to produce fear. And so when you fear something, you segregate out away from it. You hide from it, you separate from it. Or we can't have trust among us. And the foundation of every relationship, literally that separates us.
Now, just to play really quickly the devil's advocate, because I've been kind of battling with this myself. My parents, when they moved from Mexico to Chicago, they went straight to Pilsen, and then they bounced back to Little Village. So when you see, as someone that's not from this country, something that is in Spanish or a store that's in Spanish, that's like their home away from home. So when you talk about segregation and you talk about these kinds of people or these groups of people moving into the same spot, people gravitate toward what they know. Should I be feeling bad because I want to go to Pilsen and experience that ethnicity that's there?
And I think it's all right to have communities that like to gravitate towards what they feel comfortable with, what they feel at home with. The problem is when our mentality of the larger community is, well, that's the problem for Pilsen and Little Village. You know, so I think it's okay for communities to be primarily Hispanic or primarily African American, primarily Asian, whatever it may be, if in fact that you're not confined to that, I should be able to go any place, any one of us in this room should be able to go to any part of the city and be celebrated for who we are.
With the current political climate, do you think race relations are getting better or worse?
Worse. I think unfortunately this administration and this president have said to the supremacists and said to the entitlement, said to the nationalists, I'm going to be your voice, I got your back. So he's empowered the worst of America that has always been there. That whole thing, that message that Trump was doing back when Barack Obama was president about the whole birther thing and the word from, that was the message, he's not one of us. And we better do something about this. And I think that was growing all through that administration.
We talk about race baiting. Well, what's the purpose of bait? The bait is to draw you out of your natural habitat or draw you out of your hiding place. So I will dangle something in front of you. So as the dangling has happened, it's drawn out the people where they no longer, the rats don't have to come out in the nighttime while you're asleep. Now we can turn on the lights and they will sit on your table like what? You know? And so what I'm saying to you is that the race baiting has baited them and empowered them, like you said. So anything that's bait. The problem here is this. We have been traumatized as a race in the 60s because we know the feelings of the helplessness and the disempowerment. However, once you taste the feeling of freedom and power, it's a different fight.
I feel like I see apathy taking over. Like, this is what it is, this is how it's always been, and this is how it will be. It's very unfortunate to see the low number of voter turnout in some of the areas. And I think that's due to apathy. And if we stop caring, then we stop progressing.
I think also at this point it poses the question of where our respect levels are. As human beings, you would think now we're, technology has advanced, everything else has advanced, and we're still stuck in the, I guess, personality traits and category traits that were not too long ago, which is really not too long ago, but a couple, decades ago, and we're still kind of not really listening to kind of what we're here on this earth to do, and that's to be able to build this world together with each other. That level of respect is, I think, completely gone.
Is it on one race to fix racism, or is it on all of us?
I say it definitely is on all of us. However, if you were to see somebody and they're rehabbing a house, and you see one who has all the power tools and has the toolbox in their hand, and the other one has the broom, there's going to be different responsibilities, okay? But the partner who has the power there's going to be a greater responsibility on the one with the power, okay? The power tools. And so those who have the power, they need to realize that to whom much is given, much is required. So they have to own up to their responsibilities and their level of power and ability to fix the problem. That person with the broom, don't stand there saying, well, they got more stuff than I have. No, you start to sweep, and don't sweep it under the rug. Sweep, but clean up whatever area that you've been assigned to clean up.
My hometown is Jackson, Mississippi, bedrock of the civil rights movement. I see multi-ethnic, intergenerational expressions of a community moving forward for one cause. That is the only way.
Well, just really quickly here, I was looking up some statistics just before this, and for some reason, it was so hard for me to find a statistic on Latinos. You have the blacks, and then you have the whites. And so how is it that I'm supposed to educate myself or learn about what's going on if the numbers aren't there? But on a quick search, why is it that Latinos are not included? And that's also, a big key to who is it on? I think it's on education. It's on the schools that when you go to grammar school first or kindergarten through 8th, you don't really know about the Mexican wars and the Mexican leaders and stuff like that. But you know about Christopher Columbus and how that's kind of like, we don't know, so it's interesting.
The last 6 months, I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten from North Shore, downtown business. Well, why is all this violence moving up here? I told you it was coming up there. You didn't care when it was happening in the south side or the west side. You didn't care when drugs were happening, but it moved. And it's gonna move too. There's nothing left to steal here, first of all. So your car is gonna be jacked, and your business is gonna be jacked. And because you understand, it's gonna grow, it's gonna continue. So from just a business standpoint, you ought to want better for everybody. But from a justice standpoint, when it's not given, it's going to be taken.
Really good group there. Yeah, a lot of good discussions there.
I love how it's different vantage points. I love how Love used the metaphor of the power tools in the neighborhood with the rehabbing of the houses. With the power comes more responsibility, but then also Father Flagler talking about the fact that this is going to touch everybody at some point, and once it's touching them, then maybe they'll want to take action. I thought it was each person contributed something that made me stop and think.
I know, so many good takeaways too. And just the power tools, broom, rehabbing the house kind of metaphor. I think it's really good to take that with you and be able to share that in the future. It's very visual, so it's easy to remember. All right, well, we're gonna be airing these clips all month long, so be sure to tune in to see what we're talking about next.